7 of the 16. And you know, as we look at charter applications, the question is, and I don't want to be unfair, but you know, I mean, the question is that good enough? Is that higher standard that we're looking for? And that's the only, and maybe it is, but that's the question for whether that is good enough to add a new school. And appreciate your recommendations on the application.
If I could just say to that,
sure.
There's more variation within schools than across schools, and strong and growing great schools identify the leaders within the schools who can assist the weaker teachers within the schools, and the organization continues to grow and improve. And the bigger issue for me is the organization as a whole continuing to improve and grow. Now, we could draw a band at the medians, we could draw it at the top quartile, the bottom quartile, but I think drawing bands with a much more robust and cross-sectional view of data is going to help us to get more comfort around that very question.
One more thing, and this is sort of a side issue. The educationconsumers.org website is, as you know, one of my favorites. I enjoy looking at that graph and do a lot of work on it. And this may be a waste of time, and I'm sorry if you think it is, but I want to congratulate those who ranked in the top 8 or 9 of the middle schools. KIP is 9th on that graph of the metro schools, and the other schools are Meigs, DuPont Tyler, H.G. Hill, Apollo, West End, Head, Rose Park, and Lead. I want to go ahead and give a shout out to them and congratulate them for a job well done.
And that's a great point, thank you. And most of those also, I will add, have high value added school-wide effect scores this year, putting the lie to the notion that you run out of room to help students accelerate at the top.
Mr. Hayes, did you have a...
I did, and this gets back to Mr. North's question around TVOS data and specific grade levels. Did the state, in developing TVOS, and I don't know if this is maybe to Alan or Dr. Register or maybe some other folks from executive staff, is TVOS data really designed to be used at the grade level, at the individual teacher level, or is it more looking at averages and schools? And do we apply that filter to ourselves at the grade level, and how do we look?
Well, I'm going to say something and hope that Paul will rush the stage, but
come on, Dr.
The answer is absolutely yes. Every individual teacher is evaluated 50% on that TVOS effect score. It's a good thing, and it is an individual thing that I think is really helping to change the conversation.
Yeah. Dr. Chambers, would you please come at this time?
He'll have to tell you the numbers.
This is the expert.
There are many experts. I would just add that the adjustments that are made in value added are to look at growth statewide at every grade level. We're being compared against performance of Tennessee students at similar grades, so it is absolutely valid to look at per grade performance. And the data also shows that we typically have the biggest struggles where kids transition to a new school. For us, going into 5th grade is one of those challenges, but it is part of our evaluation system, at least 35% of teacher evaluation. It doesn't have the correlation. It's basically independent of prior achievement and socioeconomic status, so that everyone does have room for growth. Every child's held accountable for their progress based on where they were previously.
Do we apply that same filter to ourselves? I mean, how do we look?
Well, we actually, and we're going to be receiving the new grade-by-grade data in the coming week. What we've received so far is composite data across grade levels, but if you look at our data in the last few years, we've typically been about the state average, bounced around a little bit from grade to grade, sometimes a little down, sometimes a little up. As Alan mentioned a little earlier, in 2009-10 school year, the entire state, as we move to the new curriculum standards took a big hit in K through 8. But we have bounced back. Last year we were generally above, it varies a little bit by subject, but we were generally above average at each grade level. I know that principals look at the grade level data very closely, and a lot of decisions are made in terms of strengthening grade level teams or subject area teams based on that data.
Thank you.
In terms of district and school analysis, I think value-added data is very valuable. I've used it every year since I've been in the state of Tennessee since 1996 as another dimension of looking at school performance and school achievement. And I think I found it to be very valuable from individual teacher to grade level to school to district. So we're looking forward to seeing the data that comes this year.
Do we,
as opposed to as a complementary to hard achievement data.
do we see that compares favorably to us as a district?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think KIP's to be commended, as Mr. Coverstone said, based on the data that we've seen. And of course, this year's data is still embargoed by the state, but we've seen it, and we've also indicated or informed the state that we would be using that in presentation tonight. So I think they're to be commended for very good work.
Yes, Ms. Simmons.
I was not here, but I would be interested in what has actually changed besides the new data being released in the decision made at the end of May into the decision being made, the recommendation being made today.
Our recommendation has not changed.
The recommendation is the same.
Right, but the vote was to deny. And so my interest is in the discussion, and is that the only thing that is different? Was that so compelling that?
The 2012 data.
Well, I might add.
Each board member would have to answer that.
Yeah, and I might add here that we look at every school when it comes to TVAS scores, how much gains each school has made from year to year. And as a former principal, this is what you looked at. You take that information that you have gathered and from the test scores, and you look at how much growth those students are making from one year to the next. And when you look at that, well, it could be many factors that would play into that. But I say to KIP, looking at what we have in front of us tonight, they've made tremendous gains from last year to this year. And I envision that more of our schools probably will do the same. Sometimes they're just years. You do better than others. So it's in looking at this data, and as you said earlier, we want those merit scholars to be rewarded. We want to move in that direction. So we have to look at, as a district, we must continue to look at how schools are performing from one year to the next. Okay. And with that being said, I want to commend KIP for the improvement that they've made over the year from 2011 to 2012. And ladies and gentlemen, not just KIP, we want to see this kind of gains. We want to see gains like this in all of our schools, whether they're charter schools or not. The district moves forward when we can continue to work as a district with teachers, principals, parents, all of us, because this reflects all of us. So, are we ready for the vote? All in favor? I'm sorry.
Call for question.
All in favor of the motion to accept Mr. Coverstone's report and his recommendation for KIP to be approved, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
We have 8 approving and 1 no. Motion carries. Thank you.
The next school is Genesis Transition School. The amended application still only partially meets the standards for approval because although the applicant provided a better description of mild and moderate disabilities, the review committee was still unclear how the curriculum plan would enable students with those disabilities to obtain a high school diploma with no other assistance than an online credit recovery program. The applicant mentions job coaching on competitive work sites, but few details remain or are provided about the daily schedule, and it still indicates that most daily activities take place in-house with little outplacement, something we mentioned as a great priority in the past meeting. The logistics and organization that they would need in order to have students going out into the community and working in jobs are still lacking and not developed. The student enrollment and selection process remains confusing as the applicant alternately vacillates between a program being placed on the continuum of services to be recommended by an IEP team within MNPS and referrals made to the school with acceptance being made by an IEP team at Genesis. There were still no work experiences or partnerships defined other than the limited Second Harvest food bank training. The curriculum was confusing and unclear, and the appropriateness of the curriculum was unclear for the intended population. The operational concerns present in the original application remain unchanged in the amended application. A plan is in place for board training, however, it is not comprehensive and lacks specificity. We're not confident that funding is adequate for the training. There is still no school leader identified in the process for identification, and timeline for hiring is unclear. Equally unclear is how the school leader will be evaluated. Staffing remains unclear, as well as recruitment and enrollment plans. The applicant failed to give a full explanation of teacher qualifications and whether there would be highly qualified and licensed teachers to assist students with credit recovery on the computer. The role of the job coaches was not as well defined as we would like to see, and additionally there was no research provided to support this model for the targeted population. The budget concerns remain largely the same as before, and the budget as presented still raised questions of financial sustainability. An additional concern was raised that the budget contains no plan for costs such as build-out for the mock apartment, the kitchen/break room, computer purchases, related infrastructure expenditures, and furniture purchases for the program's training areas. Evidence of capacity does not meet the standard at this time. While the applicant did address some concerns, the reviewers were not convinced that this plan represents the best practice in transition planning for students with mild to moderate disabilities. Insufficient information is given concerning the Ed Options program on which they rely. The plan as presented appears to lean towards educating and training a population of students with more significant disabilities than described throughout. Overall, the application does not adequately address the fact that many students with mild to moderate disabilities can go on to college and higher level careers. It's unclear if there is a plan to assist those students who wish to go on to college. The Office of Innovation Division of Charter Schools therefore recommends denial of this resubmitted application. The grounds for the initial recommendation have not been satisfied either in the foregoing description or included in any subsequent discussion by the Board of Education. All these reasons constitute objective reasons for denial as required in TCA 49-13-108 Section 2. Although every attempt to exhaust the objective reasons has been made, the law requires objectivity, not exhaustiveness, and nothing in this recommendation shall be construed to limit explanations, clarifications, or elaborations in the course of future appeals. We recommend denial.
Okay. Do we have a motion for the recommendation from Mr. Coverstone?
Move approval to adopt the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next applicant is Excel Academy, Adult Charter High School. The mission and vision of the school, along with the theme, did not address the 6 priorities in the RFP for charter schools issued in September of 2011. However, there is still no detailed curriculum offered that gave confidence that this applicant understands the need for a comprehensive research-based program of studies unique to adult learning. It is still stated that the school leader, when hired, will develop that curriculum. The application also does not clearly delineate which parts of the educational programming would be delivered via direct instruction and what would be computer-based. The resubmitted application does offer some limited details regarding assessments to be used. However, the application did not present sufficient details regarding the assessment selection, and supporting research and plan for effective use of data to inform instruction are also lacking. There will only be a part-time exceptional education teacher to begin with, and the job coaches will largely be responsible for implementation of IEPs. However, in the job coach job description, no special education experience or licensure is required. Even though the students will technically be adults, the 18 to 22-year-olds with IEPs will still require adherence to the IEP requirements under federal law. The job coach description does not outline a need for special education certification or licensure that would address the implementation of an IEP. Again, insufficient information was given to help the review committee become confident this applicant could open and run a successful school. This lack of curriculum focus limits the specificity a recruitment and hiring plan can offer to prospective teachers. Although the school added several online resources for teachers, those will be inadequate if the teachers do not have specific curriculum framework from which to draw. The evaluators were not convinced that this lack of direction and focus in curriculum design left too much to chance. They were convinced that it left too much to chance. Student recruitment and enrollment remain a concern as the budget is based on 225 students in year one. Very little information is given as to how and where the applicant will find and recruit the number of adults who want high school diplomas. MNPS already has a robust system for students lacking graduation credits in 3 academies and an adult school. Insufficient detail is given on recruitment and demand in light of that capacity. Overall, there are too many unanswered questions to recommend this applicant for approval at this time. MNPS has safety net programs in place at present to address the needs of high school students in danger of not graduating that have proven successful. The reality remains that this application does not address any of the priorities in the RFP, and for these reasons, the review committee recommends denial of the application. The best possible review suggests that per pupil charges of serving this population through a charter transfer are simply greater than the charges required to provide similar services through existing MNPS programs. Absent evidence of unmet demand not served by MNPS, the applicant fails to demonstrate a reason to transfer funds to this charter program. And so the Office of Innovation, Division of Charter Schools recommends denial of this resubmitted application. The grounds for the initial denial recommendation have not been satisfied as noted in the foregoing discussion and included in any subsequent discussion by the Metro Board of Public Education. All these reasons constitute objective reasons for denial as required in TCA 4913-108 Section 2. Although every attempt to exhaust the objective reasons has been made, the law requires objectivity, not exhaustiveness. And nothing in this recommendation shall be construed to limit explanations, clarifications, or elaborations in the course of future appeals. We recommend denial.
I move that we accept Mr. Coverstone's rejection of this application.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
That brings us to Great Hearts Academy. The vision that was advanced in support of the Great Hearts application is of the prospect for excellent schools for all. The division we've witnessed over this application during the last weeks and months have created the impression, and I'd say it's a false impression, that those who support diversity in education cannot support excellence for high achievers, and that those who support excellence cannot support diversity. This is more than unfortunate. The biggest challenge we face in Nashville is accepting that we are all in this together. Failure to serve advanced students at a high level is not a West Nashville problem. It's a Davidson County problem. Schools with high concentrations of poverty are not a North Nashville problem. They're a Davidson County problem. And Great Hearts is not the only charter organization in the country with a plan for educating students to high levels. And the plan that they've presented carries significant questions regarding their ability to do it here, given the dependence on a particular teacher pipeline and the de facto selective recruitment that is evident in the demographic statistics for the schools in their current portfolio. They've sold many families a vision that their own application expresses serious doubt over their ability to deliver. Careful analysis of the application and the experience, including the perspective of visitors to the Phoenix area schools, leave many nagging concerns. Opportunities to overcome these concerns have been met with partial efforts, defensive statements, and deferred decisions. The vision carries a Harold Hill quality, and our responsibility to contract for schools that will deliver on the visions they promise leads us to recommend denial at this time. We can do better, and we have to demand more. We cannot perpetuate the false choice between excellence and diversity. The vision that this board adopted almost 4 years ago was forward-looking by embracing both. Excellent education is the key to building diverse schools, and diversity is the only route to excellent schools in the 21st century. The committee that reviewed this application first found the application only partially met the technical requirements of the rubric, and that finding led our office to recommend denial at our last meeting. After resubmission, we again asked the committee to evaluate the proposed changes to determine if they met the technical minimums of the rubric. A dedicated committee struggled with hard issues created by the repeated claims to support diversity despite substantial evidence to the contrary that they found in the application. They asked for assistance from our office in determining whether their findings were strong enough to merit a recommendation of approval. Our recommendation is consistent with that committee process. There is no separation between the two. Our recommendation is for denial. The vision of an excellent school for all is not aligned with the application before us. Unfortunately, we conclude from clear evidence, from their own words in the application, that they are not offering a diverse school, and significant doubts remain about their ability to deliver on the Phoenix recipe for excellence in Nashville. One thing that has been very difficult to understand is why our repeated efforts to encourage locations where diversity questions would be better addressed, and the opportunity to demonstrate that their model could work in Nashville, have consistently been met with minor adjustments and reservations of the right to decide later. The application clearly describes the Great Hearts plan for opening schools with higher concentrations of poverty or with students who are behind grade level. They say clearly that they have learned that future schools to serve diverse student needs will be met with plans to open a grade or two at a time with smaller classes and longer days. The plan before you is a K through 9 school with 657 students all at once. No charter school in Nashville has ever opened with that many students at once. By their own business plan, this is not a school that will be diverse. In fact, if they open it this way by their own lessons and the school is diverse, as they claim they want to make it, it will compromise their model for success in their application. It won't be excellent either. Secondly, the frame of reference for diversity, their frame of reference for diversity in Arizona does not match Nashville's at all. The exceptional education population in Nashville charters is around 13%, while the average special ed enrollment in the Great Hearts schools is around 3 to 4%. Despite claims of excellence with English language learners, many of their schools have no EL students at all. Their claims raise serious and persistent questions about the definitions of excellence and reliance on selectivity or mission fit for success. Claims regarding the success of the academic program that are contained herein are based on the model in operation in Phoenix. Interviews, the public presentation by Great Hearts, and every conversation about the keys to their success stress that the essential ingredient in that model are the teachers they hire. The teachers are primarily drawn from universities, which also stress the Great Books approach, and whose graduates are free from teacher certification requirements under Arizona law. While oblique reference to the TFA Corps in Tennessee is included in the supplemental application, Teach for America is not identified as a primary source of teachers capable of replicating the Arizona model, but rather a source of teachers for opening schools in high poverty areas. In fact, the application states clearly, quote, "As Great Heart expands across the country, our hiring needs will increase dramatically. We will need to enlarge both our pool of great colleges and universities in the pipeline as well as our geographic footprint and reputation in each region, such that we will attract the very best talent from the local areas of the schools or CMOs. Key to this process will be further development of the relationships with not only the top 4 or 5 Great Books liberal arts schools in the country, but also premier liberal arts programs at every top-tier U.S. college and university. Practically speaking, we will need to significantly increase the number of recruitment visits to an increased number of colleges and universities. Despite the absolute dependence on this pipeline of Great Books graduates and the success realized in Phoenix, and a near total lack of other identified sources for teaching talent, their own supplemental application submitted to us describing their desire to expand to Nashville as well as San Antonio states, quote, "The Great Hearts program is dependent on hiring a specific type of liberal arts teacher. The organization cannot expand in states where teacher certification requirements interrupt its proven and growing teacher pipeline. Tennessee is such a state. Teachers are required to have certification in Tennessee, and the certifications that are rarely possessed by Great Hearts teachers who are well steeped in the Great Books Foundation and excellent teachers. But this is a state of Tennessee question, and it goes to the heart of the ability to recognize and realize the vision of excellence that has been sold to us in this application. Subsequent claims of commitment by the organization to rely on more Teach for America teachers, quote, in schools serving underserved populations demonstrate clearly that the model so essential to the success in Phoenix can be easily compromised when it comes to serving underserved populations. The application repeatedly embraces a diverse portfolio in place of diverse schools. This is the same as saying that because MNPS as a whole has a student population that is diverse, we should not worry if the schools in Nashville are highly segregated. One supporter called this approach locational diversity, but this approach either illustrates a total lack of understanding regarding the significant differences between Phoenix and Nashville, or a complete rejection of the vision of the district for diverse schools. Even a cursory glance at the Phoenix portfolio, which I'll put up in a moment, shows what locational diversity looks like. Mostly white schools and a mostly African American school, with only one exception. Locational diversity in Nashville is a way to overlook particular schools and renders efforts to promote diversity meaningless. We do not recommend that this board adopt a perspective on diversity that maintains that as long as the city as a whole includes a variety of different backgrounds, we should be unconcerned if our schools happen to be isolated. The proposed transportation plan fails to address the basis for our concerns as well. The resubmission asserts a second time, incorrectly, that our previous recommendations and the board's previous actions were inconsistent with law and policy. Stating that the law does not require a transportation plan is a long way from suggesting that failure to include one justifies approval. Approval of an application may certainly consider whether and how transportation will be offered, and our original objective reasons for denial are linked directly to the impact of the decisions not to offer transportation on the best interests of the students, the district, and the community, which is a well-established legal basis for denial. The transportation plan included in the resubmission is cosmetic and unacceptable. Limited transportation based on geographic clustering of applicants discriminates against those wishing to attend but living where neighbors do not have children or whose children do not also wish to attend. Differential access to students who similarly qualify through the random lottery is tantamount to selective admission. No district school determines who it will transport after the interested applicants are identified. This plan is patently at odds with the spirit, if not the letter, of the open admission requirements of the Tennessee Charter Law. The limited time frame for the plan, 2 years, also means that after the second school opens in their plans, whether or not the school is located nearer or further from the home of students attending the first school, their transportation will be discontinued, and families will face a significant hardship in determining whether to continue or leave the school altogether. This again raises significant concerns regarding the program and its commitment to students. Since this transportation plan was proposed as a remedy for diversity concerns, its callousness also reflects the degree to which the organization's commitment to diversity is real. Finally, since the decision on where to locate the second school is completely up to Great Hearts, an assessment of demand without enforceable obligations would be our lot, the potential to open a system that selectively excludes certain known students is great. Offering to provide limited transportation for short times displays the degree to which this response is a short-term effort to find a legal loophole for approval rather than a legitimate effort to address the problematic notion of locational diversity at the heart of this proposal and the core of our objective reasons for denial. Finally, the challenge we face in Nashville does not include serving high-achieving students better, does not only include, let me start over. The challenge we face in Nashville does include serving high-achieving students better. But but it also involves serving high-achieving students currently left behind or high-achieving students of potential not located in schools near where this school will locate. And any conception of diversity within the Nashville context would underscore the importance of demonstrating how to provide excellent education for all, not just for some. If one concludes that the Telios experience shows that Great Hearts has this capability, we've repeatedly invited them to show us the way by locating where a population of students currently behind grade level can be reasonably expected to participate. A school of high achievers from socioeconomically diverse backgrounds is a vision we would readily embrace, and one that would be well served by a clear commitment to locate and serve students so situated, not a reservation of the right to decide after a contract has been entered. This is not such a plan. Their own business plan states clearly that genuine efforts to serve students starting out academically and socioeconomically behind would center on fewer grades and smaller classes. The plan under consideration is K through 9 in year 1. That is exactly the opposite of a plan that they describe as the one they'll use when serving students in need. The proposal under consideration here is not a school in Phoenix. It is not a school striving to close the achievement gap. And it is not a school demonstrating a commitment to diversity. It's a K through 9 proposal to open in 2013-14 with 557 students, and while limited transportation to neighborhoods with clusters of children also wishing to attend will be offered, there is no reason to believe that that will be offered to students currently left behind in their schools. Even if it is, it will be discontinued after 2 years. At some future date, if Great Hearts demonstrates success with a large number of strong incoming students, they may decide to open up a school within 15 minutes of low-income areas of town. This school will open with a completely different plan, differently situated students, and they will continue to be educated differently in their own separate schools. This proposal reveals a broad neglect for the mission and vision of this school district and the community history and interests of building a world-class city. Most unfortunately, it perpetuates the educational separation that runs clearly afoul of the best interests of the students in Nashville. All these reasons constitute objective reasons for denial, as required in TCA 4913-108, Section 2. Although every attempt to be exhaustive has been made, the law requires objectivity, not exhaustiveness, and nothing in this document shall be construed to limit explanations, clarifications, or elaborations. In the course of future appeals, I respectfully recommend denial.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt Mr. Coverstone's recommendation. Second.
We have a motion and second. Any questions, discussions?
I don't have any discussions. I would like to. I read the proposal, amended proposal, and I also read thoroughly both the proposal and Mr. Coverstone's analysis. And I'd like to commend Mr. Coverstone and the Innovation Office. I think they did a lot of research, a lot of analysis, and I concur. I was very hopeful that Great Hearts would come back with a amended proposal, because I wasn't opposed to the location necessarily, and I think, well, I've said that in the past, but I was hoping they would come back with a proposal that was serious about the whole issue of equity and diversity, and not this locational kind of diversity we talk about here. Because it gives me deja vu, because if locational diversity is accepted by the system, then I attended a diverse school system, even though it was segregated, because that's exactly what's going on here. You know, I think we posture the question too often, or we frame it, are you for or are you against charter schools? And that's not the issue. It's not the issue in our review of this process, of these applications. It's whether or not it fits what we do here in Nashville, as Mr. Coverstone, or what we believe in Nashville. And I think this community as a whole believes very strongly that when we talk about diversity and we talk about equity, we're talking about within the schools, not the broad concept of what's going on in the community. I mean, that's just not workable. I looked at this when they talked about the 15 minutes that kids would be provided, some kids would be provided transportation if they lived 15 minutes further from the school. And I drove from my community, which is over near Metro Center in North Nashville, to the West End area. I drove to the White Bridge area, and it took me 5 to 6 minutes. You know, so just looking at it from that perspective, I didn't think it was realistic, because you're talking about still excluding a lot of kids. If you use the 15-minute rule, we use a mileage. You know, 1.5 miles, 1.25 miles, and I was appalled that was not a part of this kind of application. And so looking at it as a whole, I just can't believe that Great Hearts are really serious about being proactive and enhancing diversity. I kind of look at it like what I see here as destroying some of the diversity that we already have. I mean, you think about it, and we have to be honest, if you open up a school in the area that they're talking about, and you pretty much are excluding kids from around the community who are in disadvantaged areas by not having the availability of transportation, what you're going to have, and they're asking us to approve other schools based on performance, what you'll have, I mean, we can approve them the next day, because what you're going to have kids who are going to apply and go to this school, who will be largely those kids who now are on the waiting list for MEGS and later MLK and Hume Falls. These are high-achieving kids anyway. You know, so this school will be filled with a lot of these kids. I looked at I don't know about Telios. I do know I looked on the computer, and the other schools showed, in Arizona, showed A's, and Telios showed a C. Well, Telios is a school that has the large population of minority and disadvantaged kids. But I saw no explanation for that. I agree with Mr. Coverstone. If Great Hearts were recommending to open up a school in a part of the city and recruit from that area, such as Bordeaux, out near Old Hickory or Briley Parkway, where you have a very diverse population, socioeconomically and racially, and come back and say, look what we did, then I would be happy with that. But that's not what this is doing. This is, in the final analysis, if we open this floodgate in 5 to 10 years, we're going to have schools for blacks, schools for Hispanics, schools for the more affluent, schools for whites. That's what's going to happen. It's no question. I see people shaking their head, but nobody has shown me why that won't happen based upon what we have here. And I consciously cannot. You know, we've been accused of being political. Well, everything I've gotten has been from politicians in this city encouraging us to vote yes. So the politics, to me, is not with us. It's somewhere else in this community. I mean, there are people who said they're going to restructure this board publicly, with money, to make sure that they have a board that will follow their will. And I consciously, irrespective of all that, cannot vote for this.
Simmons?
I'd like to respond to a couple of things you said, Mr. Kendall. First of all, I don't believe that we have any indication that they don't want to be a diverse school. That it's my understanding it is completely open enrollment. And so any child in the system can apply to go to that school. And there will be a lottery if the school if that becomes problematic. So, you know, I've worked my entire professional career on issues of diversity to increase diversity, and I would never, ever, ever support a school that I thought was against it. I don't believe this school at all is out to do to serve any particular type of constituents. If not, they wouldn't propose 5 schools in different areas of the city. To me, that's a huge diversity plan, saying the only way we can exist, or one of the ways we can exist, is that we build schools we build 5 schools in Nashville in completely separate areas. Well, what's the difference if they open one in West Nashville first, because that's where their main support is right now. They have the parent support, they have They have people that have researched this, have been involved in it. Of course, that's where you would locate your first school. And in 1 year or 2 years, there's going to be a different location. It may be in Antioch. It may be in Bordeaux. It may be one of those other locations. It most certainly will not be in West Nashville. And who's to say their diversity plan will not work? Their expressed desire and their stated desire to reach out to people. Now, we can say, well, they won't do it, and they won't do it to our satisfaction, but that's speculation. We have to hold them, to hold their feet to the fire that they will do what they say they're going to do. And I just believe that this is not a racial issue. It should not be a racial issue, and I don't think we should vote it as a racial issue. This is an educational issue. This is not, has anything to do with race.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in discussion.
And we've said over and over again to each other at retreats with Mr. Coverstone that a good charter school is one that offers excellence and diversity. And I think there's no reason to believe that they won't do exactly that.
Chair, may I respond just quickly?
Okay, Mr. Campbell.
Ms. Simmons, I'm not saying that their diversity plan won't work. I'm saying the diversity plan that's being proposed is not the proper diversity plan. This locational diversity is what I'm opposed to. The issue about open to all students, we know from our experience here in Nashville that many families who live in disadvantaged areas don't have the wherewithal to just say, okay, I'm going to apply to that school and there's no transportation, but I'm going to get there. We know that. That's why we provide in our magnet schools, and at least in our academic magnet, to those kids who can't afford. I think we provide them bus fares or something, tokens or whatever. I don't see that here.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, this is the board's discussion. We're not using audience participation
I just
tonight.
got a nod of yes. Is that correct, Dr. Risch?
Correct.
For
economically disadvantaged.
For economically disadvantaged kids, we provide bus transportation. I'm not talking about school buses, but transport with Metro. I don't see that being offered here. So, you know, a parent who is going to choose a school, who lives in a community and does not have the wherewithal to provide transportation for that child, even in making the choice of what school they're going to go to. They don't make it after the fact. They make the choice when they look at, is there transportation to this school? And if not, can I finish? If not, then their parents may not even choose to go there at all because they know they can't get the child there. In this plan, it's saying if there are enough kids, for example, in a particular area, we'll have a bus that stops there and picks up 8 or 10 kids. It's after the fact. You know, that's not true transportation. That's not offering true transportation to the disadvantaged kids in this community. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not arguing that this organization does not believe in diversity. I think they probably do. But I think the approach that's being taken here, as Mr. Coverstone has pointed out, and it's called, I think, for lack of another name, locational diversity. I'm telling you, we had locational diversity back in 1950 when I went to Pearl High School and somebody else went to Hillsborough. That was locational diversity, a diverse school system, but with a segregated schools.
Ms. Shepherd?
I think that if we put the topic of locational diversity aside, I have some real issues with their educational plan. I have real issues with how they're going to meet an educational plan in the state of Tennessee. If our requirements are such that the certificated staff has indeed has to be certificated, then how do they do their educational plan within the Tennessee system. I don't see how that will work. And that, to me, is the crux of any school, is the educational plan.
Mr. Hayes?
You know, I'd be interested to hear from someone at Great Hearts. We received these recommendations yesterday, I think. Or
It was Saturday.
Saturday.
They were Saturday.
I was very sick over the weekend. And
Well, I'm so sorry.
Didn't look at email Saturday or Sunday. I think we'd had a promise earlier Friday, and we had a process laid out at the retreat that should have had to us by Wednesday. I think is what the charter office originally promised. I didn't have a tremendous amount of time to dig through these. So I'm wondering. You know, we've heard from the Office of Innovation, which I think is Alan and Carol and maybe a handful of other folks. You know, is there someone who can address this from Great Hearts here, and would the board welcome hearing from them?
Those are their words, Mr. Hayes.
Well, you've presented to us something in a letter.
From their application.
From their application, and I'm just wondering, is there somebody here from Great Hearts who would care to address everything? And would the board welcome hearing from that person?
Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, and I do sympathize with your request. However, we have had our public participation before at our last meeting for public participation for them to come forth. And just let me finish, please. I've been in contact with the office with Ms. Hawkins and the committee, from what I can understand, because I inquired myself, you know, what is it? How is this? Ms. Hawkins stayed in this building until very late on Friday night and worked on Saturday morning along with Mr. Coverstone in his office to try and get all of this out to us. It was quite a deliberation in trying to get all of this done prior to. You're correct. We had said that we would like for this to get to us in advance, but by some token, it took longer. But no, we cannot do public participation tonight. This is the report that's coming to us from Mr. Coverstone. The discussion has already happened. Discussion at the board is what we're doing now, and we will move on into our vote.
Well, I don't believe this would be public presentation or public participation. I believe it would be asking an expert in the same way we asked Dr. Changus a question.
But Mr. Hayes, we cannot.
How is it different than asking Dr. Changus a question?
No, Mr. Hayes. Well, let me finish, please. We have not had others to come by about that we have denied tonight. They have not had the opportunity to speak. And I think it would be an unjust to those individuals. We did not give them the opportunity, and we will not set a precedent.
Historically, we have had school leaders before us.
School leaders are a part of what we are a part of, and that is the Metropolitan Nashville Public School System. We have them here in order to give us the information or more information that we need. And as chair, Mr. Hayes, I am saying we will not have public participation tonight. We will discuss on the board floor so that everyone can understand where we're coming from. This is not a night for public participation.
I believe in years past that we have had school leaders from proposed schools answer questions to this board directly.
And that's what Mr. Changus did tonight. Dr. Changus
is not a school leader. We've had applicants in front of us.
Well, Mr. Hayes, we are not going to argue the point. As chair, I think that we should look at what we are trying to set is a precedent, which we will not do. We will honor those individuals that have reported to Mr. Coverstone, and Mr. Coverstone has gone through the process. We're in discussion, and we will move on.
I will respectfully disagree that we have historically set a precedent of inviting applicants to answer questions of this board. I will let it go.
Yes, Michelle.
Respectfully, Mr. Hayes, I remember a communication that you did send out last March where I think you have a vested interest in this particular group. You said you were on a task force that recruited them to Tennessee. So I think that you have a little bit of a jaded opinion on that. And I would like to call for the question.
The question has been called for. Are we ready for the vote? All in favor of Mr. Coverstone's recommendation to deny Great Hearts, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, let it be known by saying no.
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 Okay, we have seven, sorry, I'm trying to add another board member here tonight. 7 against and 2, 7 for, 2 against.
Yes.
Motion, yes.
Is it
Well, let me finish carrying the motion through. That's 7 against, 2 for, motion.
7 for?
7 for the motion.
7 for the motion,
Which is
2
deny the
against.
Motion to deny.
And to deny,
Motion.
motion carries. Now, Dr. Gentry,
So,
I just need to compose myself.
it's okay. Mr. Coverstone, so this was painful, right? I'm pretty sure. And, you know, after getting the application and getting the information that was sent and compiled, and thank everybody for their part in that, I just have to say that I'm looking at an application and all of the categories, and I think you refer to them as technical, say meet. They all do. And so, yet you can stand before us and give us almost 6 minutes of explanation about why this application doesn't meet. And so I'm trying to reconcile in my mind where the disconnect is, possibly in our process or possibly in what we're communicating. I'm not having heartburn about anything that you've shared. It's data, it's relevant, and it's valid. And if we are going to stick with what our working premise is about the kinds of charter schools we're looking for, that they are excellent schools with solid, not diversity statements in their applications, but diversity plans that are fleshed out, well documented, and actually can show logically that they lead to some intentional, I do believe that's the word we used during the retreat, intentional diversity. So I guess I'm still kind of confused that if anyone from the media or anyone else were just to pull this and pick it up, again, I'm looking at an application that has meets in every category, but can hear a litany of reasons why it should not be approved. And I don't know if the application process doesn't speak to those things that are a little less tangible. Maybe we need to do something different. But I guess that's where this is became very interesting for me.
Certainly part of, and I want to be clear, the committee anguished and worked hard and, was part of this with us. And so it's a different thing when the volunteer committee goes through the rubric and tries with time and interviews and feedback to sort all of this out, and they spend a lot of time on it in the first period. It's just 15 days on review. And what we recommend in order for them to handle that time-wise is to go through pretty much the response and see if did the response kind of move the bar as it was noted. But this committee did also note serious concerns about whether that moving the bar got us to where we were intending to go with regard to the recommendations and concerns they had in the first place. And they were frankly torn, and it was a tough situation for them to come to a clear conclusion on. And so that's where we had that conversation and put it together. And I would say 2 things. There was no rift between the committee and the administration. The committee participated fully in this process and contributed to our conclusions. And secondly, it's the merit of the arguments that ultimately determine whether the school's in the best interest of the students, and that's what we're after with the process. And we've tried to construct a holistic process that gets us there. I believe it did in this case. Others disagree. That'll always be the case. And we will continue to refine and look at what we do. But I don't think that anybody should walk away from here without realizing how incredibly committed and hardworking the committee was in their work. And what we've done here is the farthest thing from a repudiation of that work. It is the culmination of the work that they did. We see that as part of the same piece.
And I don't doubt that. I guess I think maybe I know we did charter schools at our last retreat and that application process, and maybe we need to bring it forward. I think we have some probably challenges in our working definition of what a charter school should provide. You know, when we come with data and say that that data is reason to deny, but then that data, when it changes, is not reason to approve. I mean, we don't seem consistent in what we're doing here as a board, and that just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And you know, I believe that the process is light years ahead of what it was the first couple of times we went through this. And I see significant improvements in it. I see significant improvements in the documentation and the feedback that we get. I just think you know, I think we need help in being able to understand and support and go out into the community and explain what we're supporting as a board with regards to recommendations from the office.
Yeah, understandably. And, you know, a part of this is that the school district officials review, you know, hundreds of contracts every week, pretty much, and reach conclusions in the best interest of students where there are winners and losers. And those decisions are on the consent agenda, and you accord a certain amount of professional credibility to that process. And I do think that you never want to get rid of that professional credibility that you accord to the process. And I know that's not what you're saying at all. But that is just to say that the question is, are we getting it right so that data and outcome-wise, we're adding schools to that above the median number and closing schools that are below the median number? And that'll be the only judgment that really answers that question one way or another. And the common set of performance indicators will help to clarify that, because we'll be able to look at schools in similar sorts of bands according to the benchmarks that are moving us toward excellence for all students. So I think that will help, but there'll always be an element to which you are holding Dr. Register accountable for making good judgments that move the school district forward.
Ms. Simmons and then Mr. Kendall.
First of all, Dr. Gentry, I really appreciate your comments, and I think they're right on. I do believe that there's something wrong when we recommend for approval without question. If you look at it on paper and then the committee recommends denial, I think that is a big problem. And I do think that we should, as a board, think seriously about what we're looking for in charter schools. Are we just looking for one thing? Are we looking for two things? Are we looking for, you know, what are we looking for? I think that's incredibly important. That's the primary thing I wanted to say, is that I completely agree with you.
Mr. Kendall?
Yeah, certainly I appreciate the concern. When I first looked at the response by the committee and the Office of Innovation, I was a little confused when it said meets this or meets that. But after hearing and reading the document, obviously the whole concept of approving charter schools is a very comprehensive, very complicated process, because we're talking about who's going to do the best. We're not talking about minimal technical, and I think you call that, meets minimal technical requirements. You know, okay, I'm going to provide 2 buses. I met minimal technical requirements. But does doing that put the committee in a posture that they can say, this is best for this city? Some of it's subjective. I mean, you know, if we just thought everything was an objective, you know, okay, they meet a rubric that on the minimum level, so we got to approve them, then I think we're doing a disservice. We've got to look, and I think Mr. Coverstone in his presentation, that I assume comes a lot from the committee, went into detail about these minimum technical requirements that were met. I mean, they met some minimum technical requirements, but here's where it didn't happen. And I think they did a good job of that. And had they not done that and just gave us meets and then denial, I would say, what's going on here? But after looking at the entire presentation of what was minimal technical requirements and meets minimal technical requirements, and then what really happens, were totally 2 different things.
The only thing, I'm sorry.
Dr. Register.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to just say a word or two, if I may. And I think Dr. Gentry is very much on target with questioning where we go from here, and I think that's a very important issue. And I'll relate back to the time when I first came to Nashville, and actually when I interviewed for the job, and I thought, and I believe it or not, I interviewed you not quite as stringently as you interviewed me, but there were a couple of decisions that I made at that point in time, and one of them was acceptance of a zoning plan. I had to make a decision when I came here if that was a plan that was good for the children in Davidson County, and whether it could be implemented and enforced and advance us, and my decision was that it could be. And quite frankly, I think that's being proven to be true at this point in time. I also made a decision about the charter school climate and the context in Nashville and in Tennessee, and decided that was positive, and that I could come here and work within that climate and within that context, and that it could be successful. What I think we have to recognize today is that context has changed dramatically in this state, and it's not that before was wrong and this is right, or this is wrong and that was right. It is the fact that the context is changing, and I think we have to develop as we go forward. I've said this publicly before, I'll say it now. I think the state removed the barriers. There are no restrictions. I think that places more and greater responsibility on the Board of Education. And I think we have to, going forward, look at that context. And we have to consider a Tennessee context, and frankly that's why I was opposed to this application, because I don't think it considered the Tennessee context and our circumstances in Nashville as we go forward as being positive for us.
And I would just like to piggyback what Dr. Register just said. Are we going to get it right every time? Absolutely not. But it's a work in progress. And getting back to your interview, Dr. Register, I think we talked for almost an hour after we voted that night on Dr. Register as a director of schools. And we talked about diversity. So it's not a new thing, but we must continue to work at those things that we feel that needs to work in this district. And diversity is one of them. It will continue because you have people going and coming. But we want to make sure that we get it right as much as we possibly can, and as many times as we possibly can. And I commend this board, because this is great conversation, great discussion. It really is. And I don't think we need to minimize what this board is all about and the hard work that this board has done and is doing, and I think will do in the future. But I think we also must think about the direction that we're going, the path that we're going, academic-wise. Ms. Simmons mentioned it first in her statement. We must do more. We haven't done enough. Yes, we must do more. And we must charge ourselves as board members. We must charge this staff, Dr. Register, and this entire community to help us get to the point where we want to be, where we need to be. As Mr. North always said, if it was easy, anybody could do it. And I commend you, Mr. Coverstone. It is hot seat almost every single day. And we do appreciate what your office has done. Yes, I championed for your office when I served on the Charter School Committee, because this is bigger than what we can do in pulling someone else out of another office and say, you command this. It's more than that. It takes all of us. It takes the entire district to do what we want done and to move forward. And I say thank you for all of the hard work. Yes, Ms. Simmons. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, actually you referenced it, that we really don't know what we left on the table. We don't know how those schools that we've denied would perform. We're only doing this with some information that we've had and information that Mr. Coverstone has given us. And therefore, our vision is somewhat limited, and I think that's why we are charged as a board to ask the hard questions.
That's right.
We should have, discussions for an hour, if it takes an hour, to get all things on the table.
Exactly.
We should not call for questions when the discussion has just begun. How do we know that everyone has had a chance to have a say and to give some argument that may be persuasive to someone else?
And I will also, and I appreciate that so very much. That's why we're moving to having a work session so that we can go for 5-6 hours if we need to in this kind of discussion. And I think it's great discussion. And I really think that we need to continue this in the very near future.
Yeah, and so I would suggest that before we have charter school applicant, that we have work sessions to discuss in detail
Exactly.
all those, and to get out on the table the issues that are bothering us.
And I think that's a great recommendation. Great recommendation. Anything else? Any more discussion? No more discussion?
Ready for the director's report.
Well,
Actually,
not
I'm
quite,
sorry.
not quite. We did
that's
pull D
Sorry.
under our consent agenda, and Mr. Hayes wanted to make a comment about D. So, Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. Item D was a proposed lease for a couple thousand square feet at the former Stokes School across the street from Lipscomb University. You guys certainly may recall 2.5 years ago we had contemplated selling the building to Lipscomb. A year ago it was referenced as a potential location for expansion to meet the growing demand in the Hillsborough cluster. I've had a significant number of constituents concerned about Lipscomb's move across Belmont Boulevard, inconsistent with their institutional overlay and their own growth plans. That said, I'm not at all opposed to a short-term lease to Lipscomb University. The lease is a 12-month term for, like I said, 4 classrooms at a rate that's consistent with our lease rates for charter schools and other folks who utilize our buildings. Furthermore, the lease contains within it a 60-day termination clause that should we deem the space as space we need, we may terminate the lease immediately if we need to grow, if we need to move a program, if we have a charter. If we just need growth, we can get it back quickly. So I would certainly move for approval of the lease. But the second piece that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that I think will come back before this board immediately, Lipscomb has utilized parking around the Stoke site, and they have developed approximately 300 parking spaces. They've taken the grass, they've added crush and run gravel to the entire back side of the property, concrete blocks to mark spaces. They park anywhere from 300 to 2,000 cars a day there as far as in and out. It's specifically called out as an overflow lot within their plans. They collect fees for folks to park there. They write tickets. This was an undocumented via lease utilization of our property. Now, there are email documents behind this. There are adequate liability policies in place to protect MNPS, but to the extent that it's now a formal part of something that they use, where they direct folks there, where they run, I've seen at night valets running cars back and forth there. It's something that there's been broad consensus in the neighborhood that the neighborhood doesn't really want to see Lipscomb there permanently. And we haven't had a talk at the board level about how they use it because there's not a lease. Furthermore, within the email documentation that started about 2 years ago, their rights to utilize the parking for overflow parking expired July 1st, 2012, in a couple days. There isn't a renewal provision outlined in the email that would say how they could use it after this date. I'm assuming that Mr. Edgens will get appropriate insurance policies in place. But to the extent that we allow them to utilize this for free, that they've essentially paved 5 acres of grass behind the building, we may want to discuss a lease and consideration for those parking spaces. It could be if you were to build a garage to accommodate that many cars on campus, hard construction cost, or the cost it would take per car to build a garage is about $200 to $250 a space. Approximate rent would be anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million a year if you were to go build a garage. Now, we're not proposing building a garage, we're leasing them surface spaces. But I do think to protect our own liability, that we should have a discussion and we should have a formal lease in place that provides for the use of this overflow parking lot. So I would move approval of the building lease tonight and assure you that we can terminate if we need it, and assure our constituents that we can terminate if we need it. And I would hope that our next board meeting we can have a discussion around a lease agreement, a formal lease agreement with a termination clause for the parking. We'll have a second for the.
I second.
I have a question.
Okay.
So if our permit expires the 1st of July and we don't meet again until the 10th, should you?
Well, so that's a gray area. We don't have a lease in place with Lipscomb to utilize the dirt to park cars. So nothing has come before this board for us to approve to allow them to use it. We have, I think, one other location in the county where we have a facility in place, and Mr. Edgens, if he's here, may be able to address this, where we have one other location in the county where we lease it to an office user who's across the street via a facility agreement.
I would.
While he's coming, go ahead, Ms. Simmons.
Do we not have the capabilities to say there is no ability to use the property until we get a lease? I mean, would that be inappropriate? So that's 10 days?
Let's ask legal. Ms. Johnson? The question, would you repeat the question for Ms. Johnson, please?
Do we not have the authority to notify Lipscomb that they may not use the property for parking until we have a lease?
No one can use your property without your authority.
Well, that answers your question.
and that's the dilemma before us today. There are some emails back and forth, but there's actually not a formal lease in place or a ground. It would, technically you'd call it a ground lease, or you'd right. So we have some emails back and forth. Dr. Register and Mr. Edgens have been copied that granted them an ability to utilize the dirt. But there is not a lease that's come before this board.
Mr. North?
Generally, when we lease a building, does it also include the parking lot and use of the parking lot just with the general lease? And I know you've come up to answer the question on when we've leased a property that's across the street from an office space. How do we? I mean, do we usually have 2 leases? No. Or is the building lease include the property and
the building lease generally includes a limited amount of parking, or some parking. It's not specific enough to say you have 50 parking spaces or 120 or the entire lot, but the parking that is utilized that's needed for the lease, for if it's 10 classrooms or whatever it is, it's mostly what we have as charter schools. We do have, like Mr. Hayes referred to, a lease we have with a contracted service at a school, and they're leasing about approximately 10 classrooms. And so whatever parking is there, they're using, but it's not to the extent that Lipscomb is using the Stokes property. I guess the point more is that there was an agreement to let them use the parking before there was any lease there at the building. We do not have a separate lease agreement for just the ground. There have been other people that have used parking occasionally, and it's really been more of an agreement. It would probably be more appropriate, and I think Ms. Johnson may have suggested this before, if we let that be part of the facility use process, where we have a facility use form. When a group, for example, a league wants to use the gymnasium all year for their basketball leagues or whatever, they have an agreement, and there's a cost to that, and it's listed on the facility use, and they have to provide a hold harmless agreement and the insurance policy. It may be more appropriate for it to be part of a facility use form. Now, those forms do not come before the board, though, so the board would have to have some discussion. If you said, if the board decided they did not want Lipscomb to use this for parking, we would have to know it, because facility use just goes through my office. And it's like when someone asks to use a classroom or an auditorium for a church. We have a lot of that.
And this is, in my understanding from the description from Mr. Hayes, this is unique when compared to someone leasing a school building for a school.
Correct.
Right? But it's also not the situation where someone asks to use the property for a special event. This is something apparently that is a regular part of everyday business that they park on the property.
Correct.
Right?
They
Correct.
constructed parking on the property.
Right.
Correct.
They actually
Paved.
change the property
without
in a way
obtaining
to- permits
and in violation of federal, what is it? They didn't put any of the proper drainage in. They don't have an MPF permit. They didn't get a permit from the city of Nashville to put.
Speak into your mic, please, so we can hear you, Mr.
Thank you.
So the question is whether this is a unique enough situation to handle the use of the land other than the building. And the building lease is going to take into account usually some parking.
For 4 offices, maybe.
Right. I mean, there's going to be I mean, there's going to be some space in front of the school or wherever parking lot is. If that comes for a different discussion, does the lease pending before us? Does it not mention? There's no way to interpret the lease because I haven't read the lease. But if we're going to consider this separately, if there's a way to interpret the lease so that the land comes with leasing the building, then approving your motion, if we're going to handle it separately, may be problematic. On the other hand, if it doesn't, and going ahead and approving the lease of the building, we move forward and we can still discuss the land if that's something we want to do. Anyway, that's...
Is the demise premises, it's hatched in an exhibit?
Yes, but it is. The amount of the building that they are requesting to use is shown on a floor plan. But like Mr. North, you mentioned, it's the same thing for every other lease we have when, for example, Lead is leasing Brookmead. What they're leasing is hatched. They're leasing the whole building. Or KIP at Ewing Park that you just approved, it's assumed they would use the parking place. And it isn't like this many parking places are hatched on the drawing on the site plan. So it's assumed they would be using some parking, yes.
And the playground and all of that as well.
Correct.
Okay. My question is, are they collecting parking fees for that particular space? I know we have buildings that we lease and say you got this many parking spaces, but if they have redone the entire surface there, it means that they're parking a lot of cars there. And I've seen those cars. I've been stopped so those cars could get out on many occasions. But are they collecting fees that would go to the university instead of the school district?
That I do not know, and I told Mr. Hayes today that I will pose those questions to Lipscomb. I deal with the attorney for Lipscomb quite often, and I would pose those questions so I could have some information for the board.
We certainly would appreciate it because we could use some of the dollars if they would like to share. And I can see it could be a profitable thing.
And Mr. Hayes offered a few questions that he would like for me to ask, and I would certainly like to have any other suggestions in the board would like to know.
And maybe something, yes, but maybe this is something that we really need to talk about in a work session, so that if we are doing the building and say, okay, you have XYZ number of parking spaces, but the others, you know, would have to go into a separate lease. Okay.
I have
Ms. Hayes and then Dr. Brandon.
I have one question. When a lease is created for a building that we're leasing to, you know, a school or whomever, we assume that there's going to be parking.
Correct.
But there's no assumption of build-out of parking. Is that correct? I mean,
Correct.
basically,
Correct.
the assumption of parking is going to be that you take it as it is and you don't make changes.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So I don't
I believe, if we could go back to all emails, that we approved Lipscomb putting gravel down. They said if the lease were expired or we took the place over, they would remove it and I guess surface the grass on the property, reseed and straw the grass.
So an inch has turned into a mile, basically.
Well, and back to a part of my concern, without a lease document that's definitive, and most of us are in and out every now and again. Mr. Edgens may not be here forever. Dr. Register, another person who was copied on the emails, may, you know, at some point he may retire. So for future boards and to protect our liability especially, I believe it's imperative upon us to have a lease.
Yeah, I think.
Excuse me. Dr. Brandon and then to Dr. Register.
Well, that was my question, the liability factor that is involved. Who's responsible if an accident occurs?
We have a liability policy. You know, we're required for all of our leases. We're required for all of our, even a facility use form requires a liability policy with $1 million liability with MNPS listed as a co-insured, and we have that.
Okay, so the lease that you have runs out July 1st.
The agreement we have is not a lease. The agreement we have for parking runs out July 1st. Yes.
And the agreement is a handful of emails back and forth. It's not a written agreement. It's a couple of emails where people were copied and they said, yes, we approve.
It's an MOU.
So I believe it's imperative on us to have a lease or facility use agreement.
So what's the date that we have agreed to, or we are agreeing
July
to
1st.
lease the office space?
Well, so the office space lease commences July 1st.
Okay.
The parking MOU, as Chairwoman Porter put it, expires July 1st. Fortunately, and I could be wrong, I haven't seen a tremendous amount of demand there during the summer months. So we may have some time to address that without a negative impact to Lipscomb. That's not my intent. My intent, like I said, is to protect us and the taxpayer in the city of Nashville. And that's why I made a motion to approve the lease for the 4 offices so that the folks that are planning to go to work in a week have a home. Right. But I do think that we should address where students park, where invitees to Lipscomb park, because it shows up as an official parking lot on their map as an overflow lot. Their website directs people there. They do collect fees in the form of fines at a minimum for people who violate parking rules on campus.
They're collecting fees for trespassing.
Well, if you park in a drive aisle, or if you don't have your hang tag in your window. But the fees get really expensive really fast. And they can automatically deduct them from your student account.
So basically, Lipscomb needs to be put on notice that this is a real discussion about the parking, and that at any point, we legally have the right to say, remove the gravel and the asphalt and give us our grass back.
And that's what I'd like to see in a lease, because a lease doesn't exist.
Then I second your motion to approve the lease for Lipscomb.
Is that the building lease?
Yes.
Okay.
Call for the question.
Question, all in favor of Dr. Brennan's motion? No, it's Mr. Hayes' motion. And it's been second. Call for the question. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you so very much. They will have a home. This has been a night. Okay, Dr. Reddish.
Report, thank you. I would like to first acknowledge and thank the Metro Council for approval of a budget. We have some challenges ahead of us in terms of balancing the budget, and members of the board approved in the consent agenda tonight a continuation budget, but let's not lose sight of the fact that Metro Council and Mayor Carl Dean increased our budget by some over $40 million this year, and I think we ought to acknowledge that, and also that we have approved a capital improvements fund, a capital budget that approaches $100 million. And so even though we have the challenges of making some reductions in our expansion budget, it is an expansion budget, and I think we need to acknowledge that. I will just take a moment. I asked Ms. Porter if I could make a comment on the last thing, and I just want to say that I think Mr. North's comment was appropriate. That the use of the facility at Stokes has grown to a unique situation. It started out with an agreement when we withdrew the offer to sell to use for them to use the facility for overflow parking, and I will say that we have a great working relationship with Lipscomb. For example, we have a number of examples where Allen Arena's made available to us for use free of charge. And we have an AL certification program that we're into our 4th cohort on now. And I think they started out with an 80% reduction in tuition. So we really have a very good, strong working relationship and try to accommodate each other's needs. When we first went to the parking, it was a short-term decision with the understanding that we could withdraw that right at any time that we had a need. We do still expect that to be a short-term decision, but I think with the extensive use of they're making of the property now, that's very appropriate that we look at this as we go forward. The formal part of my director's report is planning on intercessions for the 12-13 school year. I'm going to ask Mr. Majors to abbreviate his presentation, so this is just an update on how we're doing with planning for intercession for the 2012-2013 school year. And let me say this, everyone please remember that school starts August 1st.
Absolutely, August 1st, and it will not be a problem to abbreviate this at all. Actually, with me this afternoon are Ms. Allison MacArthur. She's our Community Achieves Program Coordinator. She joined us about a month ago. And Ms. Melissa Jaggers, she is the Associate Executive Director for Alignment Nashville, who's been very instrumental in helping us work with the community partners in developing the intercession model. So basically what we'll do is a really, really quick teach once we get it up. So I go to the next one.
If you all have this link, when it comes up, there's probably 2. You'll go to the one that says copy. I think you got the link.
Okay, Be More Nashville. Be More Nashville was the brand that we adopted for our extended learning experience as we move forward with the balanced calendar for next school year. Now remember, when this board adopted the balanced calendar last fall, it had 3 days for our fall intercession and 5 days for our extended spring break. We're really viewing the 3 days for fall intercession as an opportunity for us to pilot the programs and services that our schools are going to develop, as well as the community-based partnerships that are going to be in existence for both connections with schools for site-based programming, as well as community-based opportunities that are standalone, that are not tied to school programs. The process itself started with the planning process of sending out an ITP through Alignment Nashville beginning last fall. In February, the Intercession Committee met to review and get responses from the ITP. To date, we have had 61 community-based organizations complete the invitation to participate through Alignment Nashville. 10 of our academy partners already in existence have developed programs, and 86 specific programs have been proposed, I'm sorry, 84. 84 specific programs have been proposed by these partners to either take place in our schools or standalone in various areas of the community. May 18th, all of our school teams, through working with the planning facilitators in Dr. McCarter's office, as well as the lead principals, work to develop their intercession plans based on their anticipated funding as well as their anticipated need based on student performance. The lead principals then went through the process of looking at all budgetary items that were proposed, and then approved, modified, or denied the plans as presented by the principals. That information was then sent back to us in Student Services and with Alignment Nashville, and now we're into the next phase of really looking at the proposals in our department and really making matches to other community organizations as they come forward and those that we have not been able to make matches with at this point. Now, our expectations are really simple. For the fall, again, we are trying to pilot because the 3 days is really not a change in the number of days that the students would be out for fall break. So we really want to pilot the partnerships. But our anticipation is for 15 to 20% of our students to participate in some form of intercession programming during the first year, that school-based educational programs exist, that school-based experiential learning opportunities exist for our students to expand their educational program, and the community school partnerships and community-based programs are in existence as choice options for our students. Our initial numbers to this point, that we have had over 70 elementary schools submit plans with 84 proposed activities and an anticipated budget estimate of $274,000 of their federal funding to help support those programs, and that could be programming, materials, or staffing. For middle schools, we've had 28 schools with 47 proposed activities with an anticipated budget amount of $97,639. And for our high schools, 12 high schools with 27 proposed activities at a budget estimate of $77,264,000. Now, for our fee-based programs, remember, as part of the intercession model, there will be some fee-based programs in which students would have to pay in to participate in those activities. For this activity, we've had a multitude of proposed activities with an anticipated cost of $36,400 as proposed budget for standalone fee-based activities that cannot be supported out of federal funding. And now I'm going to let Ms. Jaggers.
And quickly, Tony's already said that we did have 61 organizations that have already indicated interest. We continue to receive those and do want to continue to receive those proposals. And we're going through a process of matching those organizations with the resources, but also shifting resources where needed, and asking the organizations to tweak their offerings and customize those for what the schools want to do at their school during intercession. So we expect that number to hopefully double. That's it.
I'm going to look just a minute at each area. Many of the proposals that the schools submitted and also the responses from the community organizations hit multiple areas, but looking at Learn More, this area is supposed to meet the learning needs of students, and a theme that I saw throughout most of the proposals was that they really needed to wait and look at, before they really finalize their plans, look at their TCAP data from this year and their DEA assessments starting next year. But they had planned for content recovery so that students could recover content in October before the end of the semester. Lots of tutoring. I saw lots of AP tutoring, advanced placement courses. They wanted to tutor those students as well. So we saw proposals for multiple levels, lots of technology integration, hands-on activities. One interesting proposal that I saw was Dragon Readers and Writers. It was a remediation program, and it's a partnership between an elementary school and Vanderbilt University. Martha O'Brien had an interesting reading achievement program. It's called RAP, and that's just to name just a few. Under Experience More, This is an area where we want to enrich learning, and a lot of these things take place. One thing that I saw in my experience at the school, I would have students that would say, oh, I want a job shadow, but I can't. I cannot miss class. And that's a good thing. You know, they're conscientious about their education and high expectations that teachers have, but I think this will let students participate and not miss class, not have to have subs for teachers. So lots of job shadowing proposals, lots of science camps. I saw a STEM theme from a lot of places, ACT prep, Common Core, a lot of proposals that would meet the Common Core. There's an engineering academy that's going to take a field trip with one of their academy partners. Marathon Petroleum, they've got several wildlife habitats, and I think they're going to accommodate several schools to do some environmental topics. Nashville Children's Theater was going to have a drama camp. So again, that's just to mention a few proposals in that area. And then Do More, which again falls under multiple areas. There was an elementary school that's going to do swimming lessons, but they're also going to build in lessons on lung capacity, speed, and distance. A lot of Get Fit camps where they're going to do basketball and Zumba. I saw that across multiple schools, but then they're also going to build in numeracy and literacy. A lot of Olympic and election themes for the year, which goes along with current events. So lots of great things, lots of great opportunities for our students at multiple levels. And now we just have to get the information out.
And so we are working on, of course, we know that's very important for parents to know what the options are during intersession. So we're working closely with MNPS Communications to develop a very nice publication that will go home in early September that will detail offerings in the community. So if parents want to take advantage of things like going to the Frist and Parthenon and all the things that we have in the community that are available, but then also information about intersession and why it's important to get your child to the programming that's at the school. So we're working on that now and developing the content for that. And like I said, it will be ready for distribution in early September.
And you just leave that one up. And basically with this, we want to make sure we use this not only to promote just what's going on in intersession, but also to highlight some of the more positive things that are taking place in our school district and opportunities that are available, as you've heard tonight: charter school education, school choice options. Those are things that, again, be referenced in this. We are hoping to do this at budget neutral. There is a break-even amount for advertising sales, so we do hope to be able to do this publication at no cost to the district, and then to be able to do it both in the fall and in the spring. Now, in wrapping up, one thing that we have realized very quickly is that each month, each week, another organization comes forward. The beauty of the intercession model is it must be fluid. It must have the capacity to change based on the student's performance and the needs and the availability of programs and services. So this will be an ongoing process that we will have to constantly update and monitor to make sure that the high quality programs are in place in the areas that we most need them, and the organizations do have the opportunity to promote and explore the opportunity to do some really creative things with our schools. We will have a second ITP that will go out in
Probably about two more weeks.
In about 2 more weeks to get another round of applicants for those that do want to have community school partnerships. And then, like I said, we'll still continue to match organizations with schools based on the needs and the requests of the principals. And Dr. Register, Ms. Porter, that does conclude our presentation.
Wonderful. Any questions, anyone?
I do have a question.
Yes, Michelle.
You touched upon the fee-based programs. Were those included in some of the Do More, Be More?
Yes.
Okay, so some of those then are fee-based programs. Okay.
And there actually should be some fee-based programs in all 3 strands.
Okay. All right. That's my question. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay. My report is that we talked earlier about our board meetings and our work sessions, and I think we've gotten some pretty good response back from most of you, and I think all of you at one point in time has mentioned that you liked what we were doing with 1 regular board meeting and 1 work session. Any discussion on that? Pros, cons?
Well, you know, I sent my recommendation into Visha, but I felt like our work session should be not in this setting where we're actually at a U-shaped table, but really at a round table or more conducive to exchange of information between each other, among each other. I just felt that if we're going to have presentations made to us, they should be made in a less formal way, where we are encouraged and feel like we can, challenge and really delve into things deeply. That's my only concern.
Perhaps, and I'm thinking while you're talking, the Martin Center would be an ideal place where it would be big enough that we could sort of do, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, we've actually talked about that a number of times about changing the setting. One of the restrictions, one of the barriers has been TV coverage and the setup that's required to broadcast this. And but we can continue to look at that.
But for the work sessions?
Yeah.
They're
televised also, and that creates, that inhibits us a little bit in being able to change locations, but it is something that we can consider as we go forward.
Anyone else? Okay, so then we recommending that we just do our one regular meeting and one work session per month, excluding July. Is that okay with everyone? Unless you want to come, in a July.
No.
Okay. Moving to anything else anyone would like to bring up at this time? No? Seeing none? Then let's go to announcements.
There will be a work session in July on the budget.
Yes. Thank you so very much. And it's not on my list yet.
As well as perhaps a specially called meeting. And the other thing that we don't have on this tonight, we made a motion this evening to approve the fiscal year 2011-2012 continuing operating budget.
I thought it was under consent.
Was it under consent?
Yes.
Okay. So we will have to, I guess in July, have the work session on the 12-13 budget and then a special meeting. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps to vote on the budget.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please go on.
I just want to wish good luck to Hillwood High School alumnus Brian Baker, who won his first match at Wimbledon either today or yesterday. I don't know exactly how the time change goes. He won in straight sets, and we wish him continued luck.
Yes. You got that? Yes, that's really nice. Mr. Kendall, did you have any announcements? No. Cheryl? No? No one else? Okay, I just have one. Our next board meeting is Tuesday, July 10th. We will have our annual Parent University Summer event on Saturday, July 21st, 2012 at 9 a.m. and it will last until 3 p.m. at McGavick High School. Parent University workshops are for everyone who wants to learn more about our education, child development, wellness, personal development, and more. Workshops are open to all caregivers, including parents, grandparents, other relatives, or guardians, and events are offered at no cost to families. So please come. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience if you have not been to one.
I did forget one thing.
Okay, Ms. Cheryl.
Right before, on July 10th, before the regular board meeting, we will have our first Youth Safety Summit committee meeting beginning at 3:30 p.m. So please plan to be here. We'll have a special guest.
Just one last statement. I would want to say thank you to the board members for, all of this discussion tonight, and most of all, the grueling experience that we've had over the past couple of weeks in getting to this point. Reading all the extras that we've asked you to do. Thank you so very much. And we appreciate Ms. Hawkins and Ms. Bobo for everything that they've done as well. And that's it.
If there no further business, I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Relief.